Good morning, friends. So today I am with my friend Angela Hunt, and we are going to talk to her and ask her why this thing that she does brings her joy. Tell us what it is you are doing and why it brings you joy.
So I process wool, I raise the sheep, and then I shear the sheep. Then I get their fleece and I wash them and I card them and I turn them into yarn. And it brings me joy because I like putting things that are out of order into order. So it makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something to take something that I grew and that my sheep made and that I took care of for a year, and then to take it and clean it and process it and put it into something that's usable. That's what brings me joy.
Thank you. So now we are going to go step by step, and she's going to show us part of the process of how she processes her wool.
So this is a fleece that I sheared off one of my sheep this spring, and it's really greasy. It has lanolin in it, and lanolin is something that they use to make lotion. They use it to make bag balm. And it has kind of a greasy feel to it. So when you want to wash the fleece, you have to soak it in super hot water to melt the lanolin off of the fleece. And then that also gets all the dirt out, and it doesn't get all of this chaff out, but it does get some of it out when you wash the fleece. Then after you wash the fleece, you have to hang it up to dry over a clothesline for a couple of days, or hang it up over, something that will dry it off inside. And then you can feel the fleece that it's not greasy anymore. It just feels like fabric or like wool that you would get it like from a wool rag. And then the fleece is ready to be picked apart, which means that you take the locks, the individual locks, and you pick them apart so that they're separated. The strands are separated. These little bits right here that are kind of stuck together, you're just pulling those apart. And that's so when you put it through the combs or you put it through the drum carder, it's going to slide through without catching. So it's kind of like getting the snarls out of your hair before you actually brush it. When you kind of like work on one little snarl at a time, that's what picking is. And you pick the fleece apart, and then it's ready to go through the drum carder or ready to go through the combs. This is wool that's been picked, and I'm just putting the wool on the combs. The combs are super sharp, so I have to be careful not to get my fingers. And I put it onto the combs, and then later I'll pick up this second comb and comb the wool back and forth several times to make it like brushing your hair. You want to make the fibers align so that they're all going the same direction so you can spin the wool later on. So I'll comb it back and forth between these combs. I'm transferring it right now from this comb to this one, and just starting the process of combing those fibers all going the same direction. I'm only doing a small amount right now. Usually I would fill the comb up about halfway. So I go back and forth about 4 or 5 times, and you can see that the fibers are more aligned now. A lot of the chaff that was in it has fallen to the ground. Not all of it yet, but most of it's gone. And then I got a little bit of waste wool right here that's just too short to spin, so that goes over here to be used for something else, for stuffing a pillow or something else that I could use it for, or to make dryer balls. And then this is the last time that I'll put it on here, and then I'll show you how I take it off after it's all on here. This is called a diz. My husband made it for me. It's got a number of different holes, and I can choose which size. This is called roving that I'm going to make. I can choose which size roving I want and just get it through that hole. So I'm going to spin the end of this a little bit so that it goes through the hole easily. Then I poke it through the hole, and then I pull it off using the diz to kind of guide the fibers so they don't all bunch up. And what's coming out this end is called roving, and that's what you spin with. Normally I do a lot more than this at a time, but I wanted to make it short for the video. So here's my little piece of roving. I roll it up into a ball to store until I'm ready to spin it all. And you can see that I've already done a bunch right here. So I put it in there ready to spin. When I've got it all finished, I'll spin all that up into a little hank of yarn. That machine was called a drum carder, and you put the wool through on the tray, the silver tray that was out there, and then you turn the handle, you turn the crank, and the wool comes out brushed onto the drum, and it comes out in bats. This is a bat of wool, and I can use these bats to make anything that you would use a quilting bat for. So I could make quilts out of them. I pile a bunch of these on top of each other and make my pillows for myself, smash it down and put it into a zippered pillowcase, and that's what I sleep on at night. Or I can take it off the drum carder in roving instead of in bats. I use the same thing. I use the diz to get it off the drum carder just like I used it to get off of the combs. But you can see that the roving ball that I got is quite a bit bigger from the drum carder than it was from the combs. And the roving that comes from the drum carder has a lot of chaff in it. There's still quite a bit of hay stuck in there. A lot of it came out, but not all of it. When I use the combs, you can see that it's more work and it makes a smaller product, but almost all of the chaff is gone out of these balls. So it just depends what I want to use the roving for. If I don't mind if there's chaff in it, then I'll go ahead and use the drum carder. If it's something that I really want for like my head or around my neck, then I would use the combs to get all that chaff out. And the roving looks like this. You know, it's something that I just rolled up like I did these ones over here into a ball from the drum carder. This is roving, kind of like the roving I was showing you before, and I usually pop it down into a basket down by my feet so that it doesn't roll around and collect dust bunnies from the floor. And then I spin using the roving, but before I spin I have to do something called drafting. This roving is this thick, and if I just spun it the way it was, the yarn would be as thick as my pinky finger. So if I want it to be thin, like yarn, then I have to do what's called drafting. So I'll take the roving, and I can pre-draft like this, or I can draft as I spin, which is what I prefer to do. So you're kind of just pulling the fibers apart a little bit and making this roving thinner so that your yarn will be thinner, and you can spin as thick or as thin as you want, and just draft the roving as you go to make it the size that you want. So I get my wheel spinning, and then I've got on my left hand, my fingers are pinched together, and I'm not allowing the twist to travel past my left hand fingers, because if it gets up into the roving, then the roving will start to twist too. And if I'm going to draft the roving, then I need the roving to not be twisted. I need it to be straight. So my right hand is pulling the roving apart as I spin, and my left hand is making it so the twist can't travel past my fingers. So I'll draft a little bit, and then I'll move my left hand up the roving to let the twist travel up into that roving. And it creates the yarn as it goes, and I can go as fast or as slow as I want, and that will change the kind of yarn that I make. If I'm going faster, it's going to be a tighter yarn. If I'm going slower, it'll be a loftier, bulkier yarn. And I try to be consistent as I spin, but I can, I can spin it thicker and thinner if I want. And then it'll all go onto this bobbin and fill it up eventually. I'll just do ball after ball after ball until my bobbin is full. You can see that this is 1-ply yarn. It's only one strand. If I want 2-ply yarn, I would fill up 2 bobbins down here, and then I would bring the yarn up from both the bobbins through my spinning wheel, and I would ply the 2 bobbins together onto 1 bobbin, which is why I have 3 bobbins. And then that would be 2-ply yarn. And a little trick that I can do is I can go like this and let it twist together, and I can see what my yarn will look like once it's 2-ply. And I can look at it and say, is that as skinny as I want it? Is that as lofty as I want it? Do I want it to be tighter? Do I like it the way it is? And I can evaluate as I go and change how I'm doing my spinning. So I'll just spin a little bit so you can see what it looks like. When I've spun a little bit on this hook, I change the yarn and I bring it over to the next hook, and then that will spin it over here a little bit. Then when I've got some built up over here, I would change it to the next hook and then switch sides and fill it up, you know, from that side, filling up these gaps. And then in that way, I go back and forth, up and down the bobbin until it's full enough. Here's a finished fleece from processing it and then washing it and then picking it, carding it, spinning it. And this is the finished yarn for one of my black sheep. It's super squishy. I raise Shetland sheep, so my sheep are, the Shetland sheep have more colors than any other sheep that you can get. So there's all the range from black to gray and light gray and into white, like the cool whites. And then you have the brown ones, so dark brownish red, all the way up to caramel and then oatmeal and then the creamy white colors that you would get. So Shetland sheep, there's supposed to be 13 color gradients and all of that. So that's why I raise Shetland sheep. This is a fleece from one of my black sheep. You can see how the tips are sunburned because of sun bleaching. So this yarn is from a black sheep and I used my combs to process this fleece. So it got rid of all those sunburned tips. They kind of stick together and snarl more than usual. And that's why this yarn is so black. If I had done it with my drum carder, a lot of these tips would be left in and the yarn would be kind of a really dark brown, even though it's from a black sheep.
So once again, I want to thank Angela for coming together and being my guest today on Creating Joy. It was so much fun learning all about the processing of wool, and thank you. You're such a good friend. So I hope you guys had fun, as much fun as we did going through this process. And do you have any last words you want to share with our viewers?
Find joy in whatever you're doing.
And we'll see you next week on Creating Joy.